I went on a long solo trip to Europe last year. I hit up all these iconic places, from Paris with its fancy vibes to Barcelona's crazy energy. Just me and my backpack exploring the world. But the hostels were a whole other story. Most of the hostels I stayed in were incredibly messy. Some rooms were smaller than my closet back home. The common areas were usually kept clean, but the bedrooms were something else. I mean, who even knows what some of those stains were? The hostel staff rarely entered the bedrooms, and honestly, I get why. When you cram 6 to 10 people into a space the size of a walk-in closet, chaos is inevitable. And let's not even dive into the bathroom situation. Let's just say having a pair of flip-flops is a smart move. Maybe it's just me, but I was constantly paranoid about my stuff going missing. Those stories of stolen wallets, vanished passports, and missing bling haunted me. I guarded my passport, cash, and gadgets like a hawk, prime targets in a den of potential thieves. Sure, these hostels offered lockers like many others, but it felt awkward constantly hiding my belongings. Plus, it was a hassle, remembering lock combinations, sneaking valuables away every time I needed toiletries or a change of clothes. An irritating routine, to say the least. I went to a popular city in Europe and lodged in one of the hostels. It was a very decent place, and the rooms were not small and cramped as most hostels I have been to. We were about 4 in my room, an elderly man who looked in his 60s and 2 middle-aged men. The middle-aged men were friends, as I noticed they spoke a foreign language and were always together. Most folks I bunked with barely spoke English. I dig meeting people from diverse cultures, but the lack of communication hindered any chance of friendship. So instead of bonding, the hostel became a place to get a shower and get a good night's sleep. My first night there, the old man staggered into the room completely drunk, while the other 2 men sat on their beds laughing and making fun of him. The old man dropped his wallet and one of the guys picked it up and emptied all the cash in it. I was weirded out by this and tried to intervene, telling them that what they were doing was wrong, but they didn't understand English and couldn't be bothered with what I was saying. I have seen my share of crazy things in hostels, and I knew I had to be careful with my stuff around these guys. The few nights later, things went from weird to downright crazy. It was like any other night in the hostel. The old man came in drunk again, the 2 men laughed and made fun of him in their unfamiliar language. I was trying to get some sleep, my mind drifting between exhaustion and the excitement of tomorrow's plans. That's when the world turned upside down. My eyes snap open around 2 a.m. to the sound of a gun cocking on my head. I saw 2 figures tower over me, one waving a gun like we're in some action movie. One of them demanded me to give him my money. I immediately recognized the accent of the 2 men as that of my roommates. The room was almost pitch black, but I could have sworn they were the ones. My heart began racing faster than a Ferrari. I was shaking, my hands were trembling as I passed over everything I got. Passport, cash, gadgets. In that moment, I regretted not putting some of my cash and valuables in the locker given to me. After taking everything I had, including some of my clothes and shoes, they tied me to the bunk with zip ties. These guys were pros at this, swift, ruthless, and gone in a flash. I looked over to see the old man passed out drunk on his bed. As soon as they were out of sight, I began to yell at the top of my voice. It took several minutes before someone came in and found me. The hostel staff, surprisingly calm, sprang into action. He called the cops, took down my info, and promised to help however he could. I was taken to the hostel reception, where I tried to explain what went down, my words tumbling out in a jumble. The cops came, nonchalantly took statements, but the chances of getting my stuff back was slim to none. The hostel folks were decent, though. They arranged temporary accommodation, a safe space while I tried to sort things out. But reality hit hard when one of the hostel guests called me to the side and told me he suspected the hostel staff was in on it, especially since he could not provide the IDs of either of the 2 men. Apparently, these types of incidents happened often. I was really devastated, stuck without ID or money in a country where I barely spoke the language. I was able to get to my embassy, where I contacted my family for help. Finally, after what felt like forever, I got a new passport. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave after I boarded a flight back home several days later. I don't know if the hostel staff had anything to do with it, but I'm just glad I made it out okay. Despite everything, I still want to go on another solo trip someday.